My name's Elias. I work at Kakarot. Today we're going to talk about scaling blockchain with ZK and EVM. I think at least it is when we are talking to between crypto native people, this is a subject that we quite agree on. So I'm going to try and make it more palpable and tangible. I would say we all agree that ZK helps blockchain scale, and then blockchain helps internet of value get into a new age. Okay. Oop, I double clicked. Okay, so this is kind of the thesis: is all software will be probably secure. This is good for scaling and security, and then blockchains might become the world settlement layer. So for the little story, I don't know who has read here the roadmap of Ethereum. Okay, there is kind of like a end state of Ethereum where the entire network kind of relies on ZK for, I would say, the final stage of full scalability, where kind of every transaction is proven and uses ZK for settlement and also security. And this is where we get the hundred thousands of TPS that, if you think about it, allows us to absorb existing systems, and we're going to see it later. The vision is kind of that there is a broader scalability landscape. As you can see, there can be alt L1s, rollups, validiums, even non-EVM rollups, and they are all connected by ZK. I think actually Jordi Bailina just touched on this in the previous panel, so for those who were here, ZK really allows for this frictionless interop between chains. And this is how kind of you get this patchwork or this fabric of trust infrastructures, yeah. So why EVM? Ooh, that was a lot. Okay, I've been told that there are magnetic. Can we go back to the beginning, please? I think magnetic waves are getting lost in the midst. So what you have seen now is all the things I've pressed from the beginning. Okay, all good. So why EVM? I think we're entering soon into alt VM season, and it's good to. I think alt VMs have a play to make. So who here know what alt VM means, like the concept? Okay, so EVM is the standard in blockchain. It just means Ethereum virtual machine. It is the standard for smart contracts and applications on Ethereum and Arbitrum, Optimism, and all the Ethereum equivalent chains. When you say alt VM, what you really mean is anything that deviates from the standard. So panelists before were from Aleo. This is alt VM. What else? Starknet, Move, Aptos, Sui. These are all considered alt VM. Solana. And EVM, if you want more numbers to make it more tangible, 87% of all devs in crypto work in EVM, and then more than 95% of stablecoins live on EVM chains. So EVM is the standard. There are many challengers to the standard, but what's good to take into mind is like the hype cycles are very, I would say, volatile, but EVM is a standard that's here to stay. And what does ZK bring? So ZK brings fast finality. As mentioned again by our former panelist, fast finality is really important when you're trying to make multiple chains, dozens of chains interop. Lower security costs. There is no attack on ZK like proof systems that there are no equivalent attack on ZK proof system that you could have on OP stack optimistic sense of finality, and then scalability. So ZK really compresses computation, and this is very powerful for just scaling infrastructure to hundreds of thousands of TPS in order to absorb the Web 2, I would say Web 2 use cases like payment, store value, NASDAQ, S&P, all of these structures can be kind of brought on-chain over the next decade. So what is the next step kind of for ZK adoption? I believe we are starting to see more and more OP rollups transitioning, no, talking about transitioning to ZK. Currently, only 25% of live rollups are ZK. 75% of them are OP. And I believe that in the next 3 years, we're going to see a shift towards more 100% of ZK rollups. Not only because we have created this narrative that ZK is better, kind of as a black box, just ZK everything, but mainly because it is going to be both more secure, less, have less friction, and also cost less money. So I think ZK rollups will become the default in all rollup as a service providers. And then the end game is really that ZK gets adopted on L1. This is what I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, but really the end goal for Ethereum is to become a settlement layer where nothing else than proofs are verified. And why do you want this? You want this because once proof systems become very mature, having only proofs being verified does not hurt security, but it tenfolds scalability. And why would you want this? We're going to get this into a second, but let's just look at some numbers. We're doing projections, so of course it's all by conjecture, but this is roughly reasonable, is to say that if there are 100 rollups now and transactions grow, continue to grow, and rollups number continue to grow as well, we could have 500 billion transactions to prove every year. This is not, you could get to the same number in many different ways. So you could say, oh, I don't believe there's going to be 2,000 rollups in 3 years. I actually believe that there's going to be 5. But then those 5 rollups are going to have 10,000 TPS, and then you would fall back on those 500 billion transactions per year. And why this number is simply to say these transactions are going to be dominantly EVM transactions. Maybe over the years, the number is going to have more balance between Solana transactions, Starknet transactions, Alt VM transactions in general. But regardless, there's going to be hundreds of billions of transactions that are going to need proving. This is why I think you've seen this year, 2024, but going hard into 2025, the next piece of infrastructure that is getting pushed are prover networks. Gavilot, Fermat, Sindri, Sejic, I saw many of them, ReZero, Succinct. And why? Because everyone is seeing that you are going to have very soon, in 10 years, 20 years, at least it's our belief as a community, that there are going to be trillions of transactions, and they are going to need nanocent proving costs and real-time proving. You need ZK to become completely invisible such that it doesn't become a hype narrative anymore. It just becomes a technology in the background. So is this sufficient actually? Why would you want even 500 billion transactions? So stocks of NASDAQ trades per year is 10 billion. Futures, so all the securities there are 130 billion of them. Payments, there's 260 billion payments per year of Visa. So this is just orders of magnitude, but you're seeing that 500 billion transactions is not ridiculous. It's actually completely reasonable, if not enough. Cross-border transfers, which is arguably one of the best use case for crypto, essentially because cross-border payments right now are so costly. Even for us today as a company, Kakarot, transferring from France to US costs us over $50. So even L1 during DeFi summer would have been more suitable. So even if you assume something quite conservative, like 10% of Web 2, we get 10% maybe of the equivalent adoption of Web 2 payments and DeFi services that I just described on-chain. You are getting the orders of magnitude needed to get to the numbers I've mentioned. So this 500 billion by 2030. So what do you get from it? Again, you get scalability. And what does it really mean, scalability? It means scalability knowing that you're not in a centralized, obfuscated network. So of course you can get to these levels of scalability if you have a central database and you are the Federal Central Bank or the European Central Bank or maybe like JP Morgan or the S&P 500, because you have servers and you don't need this kind of transparency. You get instant finality, and also you get strong network effects. So you get very sweet interop between networks. So I guess what you really get compared to Web 2 today, it's not only speed, because speed we actually have to match, is more openness and composability. So it's not so easy to compose stocks from many countries, but it's even harder to compose AI from different countries. I can only speak for France, because that's the only example I know, but many companies, so AI companies, Mistral, for example, is one, which raised $1 billion last year. They are developing AI models that are like I don't know, catered to the French state, and it's an idea of sovereignty. So very soon, countries are going to close kind of their borders of data, and they're going to want to train their own models, and you're going to see the internet kind of close up. And as we see more and more, trust is I would say this trust graph is trending towards zero. The internet is already fragmented, but when you really look, we have FANG in the US and maybe Europe, but when you go to other countries, they don't have FANG, they don't have Facebook, they don't have these kind of companies, they have their own, the likes of WeChat and so on and so forth. So if crypto doesn't get more adoption, my belief is that we're going to go towards a siloed internet that has very, very little interop, and the lesser the interop, the lesser the innovation. This is my strong belief. So what is Kakarot doing? This is bit of my shield slide, but I realized I didn't start the presentation by presenting myself. So I'm Elias. Kakarot, we've been working for the past year and a half on proving EVM. What does it really mean? It means we wrote a provable EVM. What can you do with it? You can replay transactions that have been executed on EVM chains, Scroll, Taiko, Optimism, Arbitrum, and then output a proof. You can also deliver this software to Starknet, which is what we're doing. And at the end of the day, what does this do? It accelerates the penetration of ZK in the land of Ethereum. And this is what we all want. So this is kind of my map. Some would argue that it's not completely true. I agree with this map, essentially because I think it's an interesting angle to look at agility of code bases and efficiency. Who is familiar with the trade-off between ZK VMs and circuits? I guess this is the point of the. I mean, no, there are many subjects in this presentation. In these past days about ZK VMs, and etc. TLDR is circuits are the lowest level primitives that you can use to prove compute, and ZK VMs are the higher ones. So to write circuits, you need to be kind of a cryptographer to some extent. To write ZK VMs program, you need to be an engineer, and a ZK cognizant engineer. And so what I argue is RISC-V proving, so SP1, RISC-0, are the more agile, lightweight versions because you don't need to be a cryptographer and you don't need to write DSLs. And then down you have circuits. And then I argue that Starkware's cryptography is the most performant out of all the things I have named in terms of both agility and performance. So it's our sweet spot. It's our sweet spot for the last 2 years. And yeah, I think the next frontier for ZK, at least for proving for scalability, is the 10x cheaper. 10x cheaper every year. I think this is the only blocker. 10x cheaper, and then just adoption with regards to infrastructure, as our last panelist mentioned. Thank you very much.